Welcome to Being Human. I'm your host, Steve Cuss. Great to be with you today. I've been playing with a question that I actually want to begin the episode by asking you to consider. I'm kind of early in figuring this out, so we're definitely in the test phase of this question. I'd be curious to see how it sits with you. Here's the question. How many minutes per week do you think you can be exactly yourself? How many minutes a week do you think you can be exactly yourself? You know, when you think about your work life and your home life, you think about the pressures inside you and coming at you, but also you think about the people that you're around. How many of those situations are you completely human-sized, completely relaxed? You know, the very heart of this show, and actually the very heart of my teaching, is that in order for us to be deeply connected and also deeply aware of God's presence, we must be human-sized, rather than going into self-pity or self-righteousness, rather than going into pretense where we have to put on a front, or self-protection. We get to simply be exactly ourselves. And of course, this doesn't mean that we get to get away with terrible behavior. What it means is we get to be our true self, the very person that God created when he knit us together in our mother's womb. I've started to think that one of the most important things to practice in being human-sized is to start paying attention to how many minutes a week you can just be yourself, and also maybe a corollary question, how many people in your life can you be exactly yourself around? The idea of my work is that the more you do this interior work in yourself, the more kinds of people you can be exactly yourself around. Nothing to prove, nothing to protect, just you as God made you, aware of God, connected to others. It sounds lovely. It's quite tricky to do. So as we light the candle today, I'm just going to invite you to reflect on that question as we relax into God's presence. I'll just do it in silence. My guest today is Marvin Williams. I've had the pleasure of knowing Marvin for a few years now. We've spent some time together virtually, but also in person. He's a person I hold in the highest respect. Marvin's a pastor at Trinity Church in Lansing, Michigan. But what most intrigues me, and the reason I asked him on the show, Marvin is doing his doctorate in systems theory, particularly focused on the African American experience. His doctoral dissertation is called My Whole Black Self. And one of the topics we got into on this show was what it's like when you can be exactly yourself and how self-conscious you become when you cannot be exactly yourself. Marvin was an incredible guide on this episode in helping us notice those spaces too. Marvin's also a maestro of differentiation. Differentiation is one of the cornerstone tools of systems theory. I think it's one of the essential ways to connect to God. It also happens that Jesus of Nazareth is considered by many to be the most differentiated person in history. And Marvin tells us a number of stories of differentiation in his own life. I began the interview just by asking Marvin how he stumbled across systems theory and what got him intrigued in the first place.
At Fuller, in the D-Min program, and one of the books that we had to read was Edwin Friedman's Failure of Nerve. And so, and obviously, for people who don't know, Edwin Friedman is a disciple of Murray Bowen. And so Edwin Friedman's work led me to Murray Bowen's work and realizing that the foundation, the base of Edwin Friedman's work was family systems theory. Had never heard of it in my life. But everything that Friedman was talking about, I kind of double clicked on what Murray Bowen was saying, and it just resonated with me. It resonated with where I was. I was, we have an elder team. We had a couple of, bullies on the team, and I felt myself melting every single time, one of those individuals opened their mouths. At some point, it took me 2 days to open an email because it was coming from the same person, and he had never said anything positive. And I felt anxious inside, and I could not put language to it until I began reading family systems theory, Edwin Friedman's work, but also Murray Bowen's work. And when they began to share what I was going through, there was a sense of freedom that like finally somebody has said what I'm dealing with. And it empowered me to actually approach some of those bullies with a really self-differentiated person. And I didn't know what I was doing then, but later on, I found out that I was differentiating in those moments. And so the program that I was in actually led me to the work, which led me to the practice of some of the principles of family systems theory. And I've been kind of a disciple ever since.
This makes me so happy. I've been excited about this conversation for a while because I feel so spoiled, Marvin. I get to travel around and do workshops and introduce people to a theory they've never heard of in their life. And at the same time, having never heard of it, it suddenly explains so much of their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it about, you've got these bullies, this is a common scenario, the minority of the people are generating the majority of the anxiety,
Yep.
They're generating it, you're carrying it. What is it about systems theory? Because what's fascinating is your circumstance didn't change. You learned this theory, the bullies are still bullying, you're still carrying it, but what changed?
Yeah, I think what changed, I was the one that changed. I think it was Trish Taylor. I think it's Trish Taylor that says the transformation of the leader or the individual precedes the transformation of the organization. So I recognized that I could not carry somebody else's anxiety. Even the bully is carrying anxiety. And I found myself carrying that. And so it was me who changed. The environment never changed. The bullies were still the bullies, but I had to be different as I walked into the room. And so as I walked into the room, I recognized where I began and ended and where they began and ended, and realized that I can no longer carry their anxiety. And the interesting thing that happened is when I entered into that space, I was able to confront one elder in particular, and we do voting and, voting for elders to be a part of the next round. And I sat down for coffee with him and told him to his face, and again, this is me differentiate. This is me practicing family systems theory. And I told him, I cannot and will not vote for you when it's time for the vote. And then I began explaining to him why I would not vote for him. And so I told him, I want you to know from me, as opposed to getting in the room and you are surprised. And what I found is when I made that statement, there were other elders who finally said, I can make that decision as well. He will no longer bully. And they too decided not to vote for him. But again, here's the point. The transformation of the leader precedes the transformation of the team and the organization. And I witnessed that right on our own elder team. And I felt free. And I did not try to justify my vote. I did not try to justify my decision. It was me living in my identity, me living in my value, and then making a decision out of that value. And according to Edwin Friedman's book, I did not have a failure of nerve. Listen, I have plenty of times where I have made a decision and I went back on that decision and lost credibility. And it's like, I cannot do that anymore. And I think the tools that family systems theory gave me really did help me to become a better leader, a leader that's living out of value and identity as opposed to trying to be validated by somebody else.
I love case studies, Marvin. There's so much to pull out of a case study. And when I hear yours, the two reactions I have is, first of all, there are bullies. And let's say that in this case, this guy was an actual bully objectively. there's a second category. They're bullies in my head. When I do my work, I discover these people aren't bullies. They're just inappropriately trying to protect the church from me.
Yeah.
Like, I thought they were bullies, but actually, I love what made me think of this, Marvin, is when you said the bully was anxious as well.
Yeah.
Some people misbehave out of their anxiety.
Absolutely.
Their heart is to protect or do good, but we as leaders tend to take everything personally.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that as if your experience was that, but you've probably had that experience with somebody where you realize, oh, I've categorized them wrong.
Absolutely.
What does that bring to mind for you?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm feeling anxious in those moments, I build an elaborate story in my mind.
Yeah.
Build an elaborate story. It has themes, it has plots, it has subplots. It literally—
You're the hero.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. It has all of that. And then I go searching for the evidence. Confirmation bias. I go searching for the evidence to prove that my story is right. And it's like, who can live that way every day? And so, but that's what I find myself doing. I'm anxious, the bully is anxious, and the bully is probably telling themselves a story about me. I'm telling myself a story about them. And they are trying to find evidence about me. I'm trying to find evidence. It is a never-ending cycle unless somebody gets off the cycle and say, I'm going to, in this moment, I'm going to differentiate, and I am going to deal with this head on and not do the whole storytelling in my head. So that's kind of what I deal with, and I've dealt with that many times. And this tool has really, these tools have really, really significantly helped me.
The second reaction I have to your case, my heart almost breaks for this bully because you did not have a failure of nerve. You had the decency and you treated this man with dignity by sitting down with him and declaring to him. What I also love about it, Marvin, is you're not doing it in his face. You're not reprimanding him. You're defining yourself.
Absolutely.
You're doing it in a way that he's not being accused. But then at the meeting, it now becomes the dominoes fall. And I've seen this so many times because of my failure of nerve to approach someone about their bad behavior. They get away with it for so long, and everyone lets them get away with it, thinking that that's the kind thing to do or that's the Christian thing to do. But actually, it's a terrible way to treat somebody if they're behaving badly. It's a terrible way to treat them to let them get away with it, because when suddenly someone stands up to them and everyone says, yeah, me too, their shame must be intensified.
Absolutely.
As I heard your story, I went into shame because I'm like, oh, I've done that. I've actually not respected someone by calling them. I've let them get away with it. Everyone knows, no one's saying anything. I say something, and now the person feels like, what can they do? They have to leave, or
yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I think he felt like then he was being bullied by a number of the elders, and how come someone didn't tell me this? How come someone did not have the nerve to tell me this before? And it was just so happened in that moment. I got tired of getting in the car after a meeting, kicking myself and reprimanding my own self for not having the emotional currency and not loving him well. And I said, I am tired of living this way. I cannot do this. And I'm compromising my own value. I'm compromising the value and the health of this team. And I need to do something differently. And I was at fault for bringing on a little bit of the shame, because it was months before that I actually confronted him, maybe 2 or 3 years, that I should have confronted him about his behavior and did not, because of the little boy inside was afraid of being either ridiculed or rejected or something, or in my mind, something worse. And, obviously, anxiety makes you do all kinds of pathological things and think all kinds of pathological ways about yourself. And so, anyway, I got tired of being bullied. I got tired of being bullied by him and tired of reprimanding myself for not having the courage to stand up and step up to the plate, to love this person well with a gentle rebuke.
So good. Yeah, it's so good. So you've mentioned the phrase differentiation or differentiate or differentiation of self a number of times. Let's have you teach us what that is for maybe my listeners that aren't familiar with that term.
Yes, self-differentiation or differentiation of self is the ability to remain connected. I like Rich Velodis' definition: remaining connected to God, remaining connected to yourself, and remaining connected to others in highly reactive situations. Or is I am going to remain connected with the other person and not let them either validate me or invalidate me, knowing where another person ends and another person begins. So that's kind of a word salad there, but it's the ability to be self-defined as you are in a highly reactive situation and not letting another person define who you are, define your reactions, define how you're to respond to a certain situation.
The opposites then would be enmeshment or detachment. You get too wrapped up or you cut off and need to hide. I have a hunch which way you tend to go, but what would be your default?
Yeah, I think I probably would be more enmeshment than withdrawal. I can easily get lost in what somebody else thinks of me and other people defining me, and being able to break out of that, which is hence differentiation of self. So I think as a pastor, it's easy to look for validation from other individuals. And so I think I probably would be more on the enmeshment side than the other.
Okay, Marvin. So, some people learn about systems theory. They find it beneficial. They read a book. Probably the most common book people read is Failure of Nerve. But then there's Marvin Williams, who says to himself, I think what I'll do late in life while I'm a full-time pastor and I have a large family, I think I'll enroll and get a doctorate in this darn thing. So you are toward the end of your doctoral journey in systems theory. That blows me away. I mean, I'm just so impressed with everything that you've done to get to this point. Tell us about your doctoral experience with systems theory.
Yeah. So part of the reason I chose particularly self-differentiation and regarding the African American experience, partly is because I've lived it for the last 13, 14 years, being at a predominantly majority church, being the Black lead pastor. And so living in that space, when I found the material, was introduced to the material, it's like, man, this is my life. This is what I've dealt with, and part of what sums up my research or my project is Aisha Davison is a poet, and she wrote a poem called "Me and My Captain," and she said, "Got one mind." This is what she says at part of her poem. Got one mind for white folks to see, another for what I know is me. Got one mind for white folk to see, and another for what I know is me. And so there's this sense where I have lived, as W.E.B. Du Bois says, this double consciousness, this two-ness, this not a solid self, as Murray Bowen would say, but a divided self. That is, Du Bois would say, I am Black and I am American. And he would say they are mutually exclusive. Because of the conflict that African Americans feel in being one way in one setting and having to be another way in another setting. And so there's this sense where I've lived this, and differentiation of self, what I'm studying is helping me to show up in spaces as my whole Black self and not a divided self. My bringing all that I am to the table, and fighting a little bit against Du Bois' two-ness, and saying that no, I need to come with my whole self and show up, culturally, ethnically, socioeconomically, academically, all of these sub-identities that a Black man or a Black woman has to bring to the table. And so hence doing this work right now. If this never gets out in public, it's been good for me personally as a leader, as a father, as a pastor in a majority space.
I've expressed to you before that we so need your work in public. I don't know what it'll look like. I know you're doing a thesis. Sometimes theses do become more of a layman's book. I hope so, Marvin, because systems theory, I'm getting to do more and more work in Southeast Asia lately, and that's been a delight for me. And of course, we very quickly run into, when I'm in Southeast Asia, we run into that systems is white and individualistic. And here you are, there's not enough non-white academics furthering the conversation. Where have you, and there may not be a way here, I'm asking a question, I have no idea what you're going to say, but where have you run into the overt whiteness in systems theory, if at all?
Yeah, that's really, really a great question. So one of the books I'm reviewing, called Psychological Storms, and what Thomas Parham does in Psychological Storms, he does in a section give a African-centric worldview, and then he gives a Eurocentric worldview. And so he compares and contrasts. And one of the things that he talks about is that the Eurocentric worldview is highly individualistic. And self-differentiation, it wins the day with connectedness. And so then he talks about the African-centric, and he looks at this idea that Africans and African Americans, there has always been a connectedness. And there has always been a connectedness to God, or he calls the universe, connected to the community, and says that if there's an individualism, it is because Black people have kind of learned it from a Eurocentric vantage point. And so there is, with self-differentiation, there could be this sense of learning our way back to connectedness. So we see a lot of African Americans, many African Americans, going after individualism, whether it's the materialism or whether it's other kinds of things, not being connected emotionally. And Parham says, no, this has been our way ever since the beginning of time. Now, we know we can trace it back to the triune God. The triune God is interconnected, interdependent, and really there's this sense where we all have been created that way. And there's something unique, though, about African Americans that's connected to family, that's connected to community. When one person in the African American community feels something, we all feel it. Let me give you a case in point. There are times, and you're my priest now. I'm confessing to you. When something negative happens in the news, I secretly pray that it's not a Black person that's done it. Why? Because I know that if it's a Black person that's done it, it is going to impact me and it's going to impact others' perception about me, even though I am very, very far from that situation. But there is an interconnectedness that I feel that if one Black person messes it up, then it really feels like it's an impact to every other Black person. Now, I know that that's not the case, but internally, that's what I feel. So that's one of the things that I have that I'm finding out, that self-differentiation may not be as difficult for African Americans as we might think, because there's been an interconnectedness from the beginning. And maybe it's just a tweak here, tweak there, learning a principle here that says, oh, we have found our way back to this interconnectedness in our communities, with our families, and so forth and so on.
It's so fascinating. You know, I know the title or the theme of your dissertation is My Whole Black Self, and you've really done a beautiful, like, who wouldn't want to read it now, just hearing you talk about it, Marvin? But you've done a beautiful job of showing all the various elements. I'd never heard that before, about the two-ness versus the oneness, and a lot of that. And what it brings to mind is, of course, you would write that because you are the minority leader in a majority church. A couple of years ago, I was doing some work in Chicago, and I happened to be there on a Sunday, and I went to Progressive Baptist Church. Dr. Charlie Dates is the preacher. And there were two white people, me and one other person. And it was a magnificent experience of a classic Black Baptist church. And for those who know Charlie Dates, I would say he's one of the finest preachers in America alive today. And, you know, he brings all his doctoral New Testament and all his Blackness, and it's an incredible experience. I personally, as a fellow preacher, was tearing up at what he was saying, as well as the structure of the sermon, you know, the way he structured it.
Absolutely.
But he pointed us out. He called us his vanilla brother and sister. And it was delightful. It was funny. You know, I say to you, my chocolate brothers and sisters and our vanilla guests, he said. And I received it as a delight and as a humorous thing. But I was already hyper aware that I'm the only one of my kind in the room. Similarly, when my teenage daughter comes home for lunch from school, she'll bring sometimes 6 or 8 Swifties. They're all Swifties. And I'm the only middle-aged man among these teenage girls, and they're delightful. They're so much fun. But I'm extra aware. I'm more weary afterwards because I'm doing more work.
Yeah.
And that's as a person from majority culture. That's as a person that most of the time I'm not even thinking about it. Okay, now we shift to your reality, which I couldn't begin to imagine, where most of the time it's the other way for you. Tell us what it's like when you're the only one in the room, or when you're in those situations where you're extra not sensitive, you're extra like self-conscious.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. Our elders had a retreat not too long ago, and me and another elder, African-American elder, we walked into this restaurant, and my first reaction is there anybody else here like me? That's immediately when I walk into places like that, is there anybody else in here like me? And another reaction is I'm assuming by the looks of some people, they will reduce me with their eyes and in their mind. And so I have to, this is the crazy part or the interesting part about anxiety. I feel it inside, and I immediately feel that I ask the question, okay, am I going to get bigger here, or am I going to get smaller here? Am I going to kind of be lost in the woodwork, not say anything and wait to be called on? Or am I going to be bigger to prove that I belong here, that I belong in this room, I belong at this table, I belong in this restaurant. I pay taxes here. So I should be able to go almost any place that I desire to and be my full self and be comfortable with who I am walking into these spaces. So I have for a long time been the only one in certain spaces. And I didn't have the tools that I have now to be able to respond in a way that honors my identity, but also staying connected to everybody who's in the room. And now it becomes a little bit easier these days, just because I have the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so in this restaurant or any number of thousands of settings, sometimes you make the choice to diminish yourself. Sometimes you make the choice to get into, I guess I would say, survive by getting bigger.
Yeah.
And then surely sometimes, Marvin, you're ping-ponging between the two.
Yeah.
What's it like to then go home and have to manage how you showed up? Like I've had a tiny taste of that where I'm like, I don't like the way I did that. It's like you have a whole second experience after the experience. That must be a reality as well.
Yeah. So again, it's getting in the car and replaying the moment, asking myself the question, how come I didn't speak up in that moment? How come I didn't say something in that moment? I remember when I'll give you an example of when I did not show up when I should have. This was, I can't remember, several years ago. Can't remember who it was. A Black man got shot, was killed. And then that same weekend, the bird watcher, who was a woman, called the police on him. And so we had a staff meeting. We had a kind of a leaders meeting, and we walked into that meeting, and I felt the weight of all that had happened. And none of my white friends, my white coworkers said anything. And it was just business as usual. And I'm saying somebody is going to say something about what happened this weekend. Somebody, my friends who have walked with me, we've walked together for this last decade, they surely will feel, or at least ask the question, how did you feel this weekend? So I received a text from one of my friends who don't attend our church, not on our staff, and she said, I want you to know that I stand with you. I feel the pain that you are probably feeling now. And I just want you to know that this is not right. So here's someone who's not connected to me, who acknowledges it. She was a white woman, acknowledges it, and individuals around the table did not. And I should have said something. But something inside of me says, so if you say something, is this belly aching? Is this, are you raising something that you should not raise at this point? Are you that sensitive? And so I did not say anything. And I went back to my office and I said, okay, I was kicking myself that I did not say something. In that moment, I should have differentiated. I should have said, hey, I would rather us not deal with the agenda right now. I am feeling the pain of what happened this weekend, and I'm feeling angry that nobody in this room said anything. I should have, but I didn't. And again, I would not make that mistake today, but that was one moment, man, I needed to say something. And it was after the fact that I said something, but I should have said something in the moment, and I didn't.
In my ministry, I think actually even when you went through our training, Marvin, I used the word calm, aware, and present. Those are the three words. Calm, aware, and present. That's the opposite of anxiety. I've had a few experiences in my life that have taught me, but the one that sealed it was a group of African American women. I was doing a workshop, and they were we were really connecting. And they at one point they're like, "What's this calm nonsense?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, the opposite of anxiety is calm." They're like, "Oh no. The calmer you are, the more outraged we're going to be. We want you as angry as we are." It was very helpful for me. Like they were basically saying, if I'm sharing some kind of systemic injustice and you're getting calm, that's worse. And that's when I realized calm is one of many tools. It's not the destination and connected.
Absolutely.
And that's what you were pleading for, I think, in that room is who sees me right now, who is connected to me.
Yeah. And I think there's another writer, Kenneth Maurice Taylor. He talks about the identity in Black men. And one of the things that he raises is the invisibility syndrome. And the invisibility syndrome is this ability to not be seen by individuals of the majority culture, or at least sometimes not being seen at all, like you feel like Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. But by the same token, I'm invisible. My academics are invisible. My ethnicity is invisible. You don't see me the way I really am. You see me based on your perception of me. And that perception has been colored, no pun intended, by a racialized society, a racialized culture. And so when you see a Trayvon Martin is asking the question of George Zimmerman a number of years ago, how come you don't see me? Why is it that you don't see me? And he may have started getting a little reactive, but what I think he was reacting to is you're reducing me. You're reducing me to something that you're imposing on me, and no wonder you have some African American men to get bigger. Why do we get bigger sometimes is because we don't like being reduced. We don't like being reduced to something that we are not. And so there's this sense where when I am not seen or I am invisible, there is a reactivity. And I think there's a place for calmness. I think there's a place for emotional regulation. As I think Du Bois would say, one of the things I appreciate about Murray Bowen's work, he would probably say, I appreciate the ability that you're trying to teach individuals emotional regulation. And we know that many of the stories of African-American men who are highly reactive, some of those stories don't end well. So being able to help someone know how to be emotionally regulated. In case in point, about a year and a half ago, I was in a Rite Aid around near our house, and I had I needed some snack, junk food that I didn't need, but walked in and was in the candy aisle, and immediately a woman, and everybody pretty much knows me there. A woman comes, she stands in the aisle where I am, pretending to organize candy that's already organized. And I knew exactly what she was doing. And I could have become very reactive. And again, I know if I had become reactive and belligerent and hostile and reactive to what I considered a microaggression or an injustice, she could have easily called the police. And at that point, I did not want to give a reaction that was not warranted for the situation. And so I think Du Bois would say, hey, what Murray Bowen has done, he has given a tool in self-differentiation, which a part of it is emotional regulation. And it doesn't mean that just because I'm calm doesn't mean that I'm not angry. It's just that I know the consequences if a Black man gets angry. I am going to be viewed a certain way. And I have to be aware of that. And again, it's labor intensive sometimes that I have to watch how I react because I know what the consequences might be. And call that right or wrong, but I think self-differentiation really does help as a tool to regulate my emotions and then to redirect my emotions in a way that probably is going to be helpful in the end. Because if I'm in jail, I can't really help. I can't really help anything. And so I want to be able to know what's going on inside of me, know when to be calm, and know when to be reactive in a way that's going to help.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for being willing to share that. And, Marvin, I know that you've been dreading the gauntlet really probably for weeks at this point. But before we get to the gauntlet, just the final question. What is something that I, as a white man, may not know that you would like me to know?
Yeah, I think about how I show up all the time. I think about it all the time. I think about how will I be perceived. I know my own self-perception and self-identity. That's a part that you can't see, but I know that what other people think of me is imposed on me, and I don't want to look through the lenses of what other people impose on me. So I want other people to know that I think about this all the time. When I walk into a restaurant, when I walk into a room, I immediately think, is there anybody else in this room like me? And call it right or wrong, but immediately those are some things that I think about. And then for you have done this well. Even when we were together in Colorado, you mentioned that, like I was thinking about you, Marvin, even before you came in the room, because I knew that you probably would be one of the only ethnic people here, one of the only African Americans here. And so that was very helpful for me, is because I wasn't the only one thinking about it. There was somebody else who was thinking about it as well.
I don't know how many cohorts we've done now over the years, but the cohort that you were in remains one of my all-time favorites. It was you and a lady named Rachel and some other people. Rachel's been a dear friend of ours for almost 20 years now, and it was incredibly powerful what your group did, the work you guys did together.
It's a great time. Thank you.
Well, it has been described as the world's best and the world's worst icebreakers. Let's see, Marvin, how you endure the gauntlet. I'm a little concerned because you've sailed through the interview, and that makes me uncomfortable. You seem too comfortable. So let's see if we can change things up with the gauntlet. Here's a question. We're going to do 5 questions today. Okay. Question number 1. In the absence of information, people connect the dots in the most pathological way possible. What goes through your mind when you're anxious, but you don't have all the information?
Yeah, and I think I hinted at this already, is that I build stories. I build stories about other people, build stories about what they think of me. And then with it's elaborate, it has themes, it has subplots. And then I go searching for information, go searching for evidence and the receipts to say, see, I told you they thought I was incompetent. See, I told you they thought all Black people did X, Y, and Z. See, I told you, based on the way they looked at me, based on the way they left me out of something, I look for the evidence of the story that I've built. And 99.9% of the time, they're not even thinking about me. And that bruises my ego as well, right, because now you're telling me you're not thinking about me. So that's what I do with that.
That's, ladies and gentlemen, that is what we call a double bind. Marvin, tell us about an early, profound memory that you have from childhood and the meaning you've made from it.
Yeah, that's so probably about 5 or 6 years old. A young Black man was shot in our gangway. And I grew up in Chicago, and we had about 15 houses on either side of the block. And the houses are separated by a little strip of land and a concrete walkway. And the concrete walkway and the plot of land is called our gangway. I have no idea what this young man had done. All I know is a Sunday night, pop, 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 and the police shot this young black man in the back. And we, our neighborhood was up in arms. Monday night, there were protests, like right in front of our house. There were a vigil. And again, I have no clue of what this young man did. And all I know is that the police shot him in the back, and there was outrage, and it was happening in front of my house. Now, an interesting thing is that, I'm 6, 7 years old, and we're learning in school about officer friendly. So we may have coloring books, and we would color officer friendly. And I was made to know and made to believe that that police officers were friendly. Now, again, I am not railing on the police officers. I'm just giving you my experience. And there was a disconnect. And I began asking, is officer friendly actually friendly? And so I think my own thought about police officers began forming at a very, very early age. And I have police officer friends who love what they do. They do their job well. But that was an early memory for me that began to shape my thinking and my feeling and my anxiety even about police officers and black men.
I've never in my life thought about a young boy at 5 or 6 witnessing a vigil, a community gathering in remembrance of a innocent black person killed. Would you give us a ballpark of how many vigils you think you've attended in your life, just a rough number?
Yeah, probably about 5 or 6. Older, the Michigan State University shooting, I was part of that. And another vigil, a young lady died at my kid's high school, so I was a part of that. But this one stands out because I didn't know what it was. And I saw anger, I saw protest, but I couldn't wrap my mind around my little young mind of what this was all about and how it could have been connected to much of our racialized society. And in this moment, I just remember what I saw, what I experienced, and how it began. I didn't know it then, but it was many years later where it began to shape my thinking that, oh, that's what that was. Oh, the protest was about police brutality. Oh, that's what why people were so angry in front of this was happening in front. I could look out of the window and I could see this throng of people protesting what happened the night before.
Yeah. Marvin, what's a recurring fear that has a grip on your heart or has gripped your heart?
That's I think one is, there are a number, but one is I'm in the gym and I'm lifting 600 pounds without a spotter. And I in doing ministry, doing the work that I do, I am lifting something that's too heavy for me and I don't have a spotter. And the bar is slowly coming down around my neck and there's nobody in the gym to help lift it. And so as a pastor, I feel that way, that recurring fear that I will be doing this all alone by myself, trying to lift the 600 pounds of everybody else's anxiety, which I know, kind of rebuke me a little bit. I know that I shouldn't be taking on other people's anxiety, but, self-differentiation is about growth. We'll never, mature. I mean, we'll never get it all right, but we're maturing. But that's a recurring fear, that I'm doing this all by myself. The bar of the weight is coming down around my neck, and I have nobody to lift it off me. I'm in the gym by myself.
That's a poignant fear. All right, 2 more questions to go. One of the unique challenges of being a lead pastor, I was not prepared for it, is how personally I took criticism, and then how cumulative criticism, like a season of criticism, could just really wear me down. Tell us about a season in your life that just felt like unrelenting criticism.
Yeah, we just came out of it, 4 years ago. And again, to quote our good friend Rich Velotis again, he calls it CPR, the COVID, politics, and race. They all converged around the same time. And as leaders at Trinity Church, we attempted to love our people well in all 3 of these areas. And it's interesting, no matter how big your heart is, how much you try to love people and lead them well, they always found something to criticize. So we said, okay, we wanted everyone to mask up, social distance. And this is the embryonic stages of COVID. Nobody knew exactly what it was. We wanted to protect our congregation. We are shepherds. We have a stewardship, and we wanted to take our stewardship seriously. If we were wrong, we were wrong, but we did it out of love. And the criticism was, you are an operative of the government. Governor Whitmer has you in the palm of her hands. And no, we're just simply trying to love you well. And you're criticizing that. And then we talk about politics. Like, you should get on the platform and you should say, we should vote Republican. We should vote for Donald Trump because he is going to protect the babies. In the 13 years that I've been here, our elders have never, ever preached politics from the pulpit. Why should we start now? And if you don't preach politics, and if you don't preach, we should vote this way, we're leaving the church. And Edwin Friedman says, you can't lead someone. It's very difficult to lead someone who's walking away from you. And then we said, if you're going to leave, we're going to bless you. And then they got upset because we didn't chase them. Like, we're not chasing you to say, please stay, please stay, please stay. So we got criticized for that. And then the race thing, when George Floyd was killed, our elders made a statement to say, we are a diverse church. Like, many businesses and organizations were making statements, and our elders decided to make a statement. And why did that happen? The people were saying, well, Trinity has gone woke, and it was because of that black pastor. Listen, most of the guys on our team were white at the time. They were the ones that actually said that. I was not the one who said we should make a statement. And there were individuals who left because of that. And there was nothing we could do that was right in the eyes of some people. And many people left, and we blessed them as they left. And so anyway, that's answer to that question. So that was a season for us, and we're on the other side of it now.
Yeah, you are. That was a long season. Marvin, when in your life lately have you felt most fully and completely loved?
That's a great one. It's an easier one, and that is when my granddaughter, my new granddaughter, she's 11 months old. She'll be 12 months at the end of this month. Or she'll be a year old at the end of this month. When she kisses me, when she waves at me, I don't feel judged. She doesn't know my flaws, my foibles. She doesn't know the anxiety that's inside of me. She just simply loves me. She looks at me, and I feel loved. I don't feel judged. But now that she has a lot of teeth, when she bites down on my jaw, I do feel the judgment of God in a sense in that way. But I feel fully loved when she's watching me, looking at me, laughing at me, giving me strawberries, raspberries on my cheek, and all is right with the world when she does that.
My guest has been Marvin Williams. Marvin's the pastor at Trinity Church in Lansing, Michigan. He's doing groundbreaking work in his doctoral work on my whole Black self, the power of differentiation in Black space. We're all looking forward, Marvin, to seeing, once you're wrapping that up, what that'll be, how you'll be offering that for the rest of us. Thank you so much for coming on Being Human.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.